I'm Lucy, aka the Psychological Fitness Nana, and I have set up or founded the Healthy Minds for Parents community because one, I'm a parent. My children are grown up now, but I'm also a grandparent. So I've got a grandson who's just turned 2, absolute apple of my eye. I'm also someone who's been studying, understanding, learning, walking the walk of psychological fitness now for almost 20 years. I also founded Bounce Forward as a charity that supports schools. My passion is I would like psychological fitness and the skills of psychological fitness to be taught in every school in the country so that we don't wait until we've got problems to react. We actually are teaching children from a very early age about the fact that life is tough and that we can face challenges, and we do have the strengths and the capacity. We might not have the skills yet, but we've got the capacity to be able to learn those skills and to use them and to grow and develop and nurture them proactively. The Healthy Minds for Parents community is new. Welcome to all the new members, and I'm really hoping that we can grow this community over the next weeks and months. What I really want to do here is to create a space where we can come together as parents. We can be honest and open with each other about the wonder of being a parent and also the challenges. I mean, I'm at the sort of space now, as I said, when I've got grandchildren, but I remember really vividly those moments when my children were starting to experience the world beyond the sort of lovely, confines of my space. When they started school, when they first went on their friend's sleepover, when they joined their first social club, when they got knocked back for the first time, their first relationship, the first time that they fell out with their friend, the first time that they had a real setback. All these things that happen, and how do we as parents really develop that psychological fitness, which for us is a combination of mental resilience and emotional well-being? How do we nurture that in the same way that we might nurture our children to read and write? We might nurture the physical fitness of our children. Our brain needs nurturing, those muscles need growing and developing. So I hope that you're going to come and join me. If you can't come to these, put in questions into the group, add comments. Let's share in a kind, calm, supportive way with each other. So let me share the slides tonight and let's get going. So I was having a conversation with a couple of parents who had not really heard of this term post-traumatic growth, and it's actually where my work started. And it was really because I'd pretty much up until that point been what I thought was a failure. I generally just thought I wasn't really sort of going anywhere. And I came across positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, self-efficacy, these things which were really about understanding the brain when it's working at its best and what we can do to grow through setbacks, and the growth happens over a period of time. And anyway, I was talking about post-traumatic growth. People hadn't heard about it. So I thought, well, what a great topic for the community to get going. So tonight is really about how growth can really help us emerge from struggle. This isn't about pretending that difficult experiences are positive, but it is about understanding that with the right support and the skills that we can learn, that human beings can do more than just survive, and certainly more than just survive hardship. We can adapt, we can deepen, strengthen, reconnect, grow. Not always, but that would be the aim, to try and move towards that growth. And that's what psychological fitness can really help make possible. If you pause for a moment and think about your own learning, if you think back to the moments that make you who you are today. Now, I'm going to caveat it because some of you may be thinking, well, I'm not that good and I feel a failure and I don't feel that I have learnt anything. I hope lots of you do also notice the learning and growth opportunities. What are the moments that were turning points for us, or the moments that were a light bulb moment where you suddenly realised or saw or thought, hold on a minute, what I believe to be true isn't actually completely true. That was tough, but that was then, and here I am now. And those moments or things where you thought, I'm never going to be able to get through this. And if you now reflect and think about it, actually, you've come a long way. Now, we don't want negative, difficult challenges to happen. And I know for myself, I'm who I am today because of all of those things. What is post-traumatic growth and what isn't it? So the first, it's not about suggesting that trauma is good. I pause for a minute, because any type of challenge, trauma, adversity that we face is tough. When we're in those moments, nobody wants to be there. To suggest that because we know that we can grow from trauma and difficult situations, to sort of try and turn it, well, it's a good thing then. Of course it isn't. Trauma is painful. It's highly challenging. And post-traumatic growth is about acknowledging this is difficult and tough and I didn't want to be here, but I am. And so how can I develop? The growth part is, how can I develop more strength? How can I prioritize what's important to me? How can I strengthen those relationships and meaning through the process of the struggle and what's happening? And so we think about post-traumatic growth as the psychologically positive elements, the change that happens following through as a result of major adversity and trauma. The second is that they can both exist at the same time. To think that it's just this sort of linear, you face a challenge and you start to recognize that challenge and then start to grow from it. It just doesn't really work like that. It's very complicated, mixed up, depends on the situation. Someone can be grieving and anxious and overwhelmed and still dealing with the trauma, but also notice small signs of growth, small little things that enable you to start to see it through a slightly different lens, a slightly different way. Post-traumatic growth is not about bouncing back quickly. That's not what this is about. It's not about pretending that everything's fine, but it can sit alongside pain. So the two are not in competition with each other. They can exist separately and they can also exist together and grow at the same time. Post-traumatic growth really is about that the growth comes from the struggle rather than the trauma, like rather than the thing that's happened in itself. It's about understanding the struggle that you're going through is where the growth comes from. A helpful phrase to think about it, I think, is it's not what happens that makes us grow, it's how we're supported to make sense of it, how we cope with it, and how we rebuild afterwards. And I think those three elements of that comes back to that idea, we're not trying to pretend that this stuff isn't happening, it isn't real and it isn't hard. But that's where your windows are for growth and learning how to cope with these situations. As parents, for us to just be thoughtful about the sorts of words that we use around when our children are struggling. And I'm not necessarily talking about the big things that happen here, but perhaps some of the smaller challenges that they face. But when we say things like, you'll be stronger because of this, that can feel really dismissive and as if I'm not being seen and heard. And at the extreme end of that will make kids not talk to us and close up and think that we're not here to support them. A more supportive message is, this is hard. It is. I'm not trying to minimize that. It's hard. But you haven't got to do anything about it today. I'm here. You can rebuild. You haven't got to do it today, but I absolutely trust that you've got the capacity to do it and to grow over time. It can't be forced. This isn't a quick fix type thing. This isn't something where you'll go from one day to the next where you're going to see some miracle growth going on. It shows up quietly. Things like just starting for them to either be saying or acting in a way that tells you they know what matters to them now, what's most important, that they're not on their own, that they start to recognize that they can get through difficult things, even in those little tiny moments, but that they see that they can do that. And wanting to use that experience to be able to help other people. This last one is important because when we are struggling, actually for ourselves, let's put the kids out the room for a minute. When we are struggling ourselves, or when we see our partners and our friends and the people around us struggling, sometimes what we do is we just sort of try and wrap them up in cotton wool, and we don't want to put anything difficult on them. But actually sometimes saying to somebody, can you help me? It just gives that message that, oh, I am still helpful and useful. And even though I'm going through this really difficult thing, they still want that help. So that growth, that idea, how can you use that experience to help other people? Because that matters a lot for psychological fitness and for growth through setbacks and challenges. So remember, these shifts can be small, tiny little minute things, often gradual and deeply personal. Again, as parents, I think sometimes what we try and do is relate it to something that we've had. And the reality is that whilst our children may be growing up in your environment, under your wings, and similar sort of situations, they are individuals. And the way in which they're going to experience that setback and challenge, whilst your experience of it may be helpful, but the way in which that happens is deeply personal. So the idea that we can give them our benefit of hindsight and expect that by telling them about my experience means that they're going to absolutely not choose that path, it doesn't work like that. The thing with post-traumatic growth is that it has to come from within. And sometimes that growth that may look very different to what you are expecting or what you want or what happened for you. And it's important that you distinguish and separate that out. As parents, the behavior that we model is super powerful. I talk to so many parents who say to me, oh, it's too late for me, my kids are too old. The brain is a wonderful thing, and actually right the way through our lives, it has the potential to change and to grow and to adapt. We can develop new neural pathways that pretty much right the way through our lives. When our children are growing from age 10 through to about 26, 27, the latest neuroscience is the brain is still developing way into our late 20s. We can grow new neural pathways. What happens when we learn something is when we're first learning it, we've got to jump a huge sort of canyon and trying to get from one side to the other. But over time, through practice, through experience, through support and all of that, the gap between one neural pathway and the other gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and in the end it's just there, it's ingrained. So we want to teach our children that potential, but it's not an overnight thing, and it is going to happen gradually, and we as parents can really model that. Some really simple things that we can do is showing over time your growth about something, choosing something which is honest and authentic to you, that you've wanted to learn about yourself, using opportunities to. I felt really overwhelmed today. I went through this little bit where I almost didn't know what to do, and I'm still thinking about that. And what you're not trying to do is to solve everything in that moment, but you're just laying down these foundations of a conversation that model this behavior, that they look and say, oh, they were overwhelmed and they didn't really understand it and they were confused and they haven't got an answer. Bringing our children into those conversations. Look, I was really overwhelmed today and I almost felt like I just didn't know what to do. You know, have you ever had that? If you were me, what could you have done? Have you got any techniques or things that you do in that situation, and sort of developing that conversation together? I wanted to finish by just saying what helps. The aim is not about us raising children who never struggle. It's unrealistic. I know we want it. I know we absolutely want our children never to have any struggle, but the reality is it's just not reality. The aim is to help our children believe that when things happen, when hard things happen, I've got skills. I've got people around me who are going to support me. I've got inner strength and inner resources that are going to help me get through. So the ways in which we can provide the conditions for growth through challenge and through setback. The first is connection, right? Keeping lines of communication open. And that often means just checking in with ourselves about, you know, when I'm saying something to my children, have I got like an intended purpose here, or am I just letting them know I'm here? I'm around, I'm here when you need them. I'm not using that connection to tell them what to do or to share my past experience or to come up with some advice. But what I want to do is to reinforce that I'm here. And reinforcing human connection more generally. When it comes to our psychological fitness, the connections around us really matter. Just because you've been dropped from the football team, for example, or you're having to shift from one team to another, there's opportunities to either create new connections with people, to still maintain those connections that we had before, and to strengthen them. The second is really about self-awareness and noticing. And I've already talked about modeling and how we model that, but noticing and being curious about these things, what we're thinking, how we're feeling, what's going on around us, the reality of the situation. And that is about paying attention, standing in the shoes of our children, seeing it through their eyes, thinking about it from different perspectives. Yes, tuning into our thoughts and beliefs. In our resilience series, in this course, I'll talk a lot about the ABC model, the link between thoughts, feelings, and behaviours. So please take a look at that. But that's really what I'm talking about here. The third area is around stillness. This is both about being present. Then what we try and do in some of these things is have the conversation in 5 minutes because we've got a trillion other things to do. I get it, I understand it. But my suggestion would be that if you don't have that time to be present, don't open it up, or be honest about that and say, look, this conversation is really, and it needs more time. And I've got this much going on, and I'm not going to be able to give you the time or the respect that it needs. So there's that side of it. And then the other thing around stillness is just about quietening our mind, either through the things that we can do bodily, breathing, muscle relaxation, those sorts of things, stilling our mind by a distraction. When we're feeling really overwhelmed and we've got a lot of stuff going on, sometimes being calm and breathing doesn't help. What we need to do is to just go and do something that cognitively is going to distract me, counting down from 100 in threes. And also connection. So, sometimes we think about connection as sort of talking about the difficult things. And we know that, a problem shared is a problem halved. But when it comes to stillness, some of those social elements of stillness are just about chatting, just about talking. It's why I set up this community, because it's about just knowing that I'm not on my own. There are other people around. So it's not about going and talking to people about the problem. It's just going and chatting to other people because we can, and because we're social animals. And that in itself is a recovery stillness type approach. The fourth is about being real. People will say to me all the time, well, Lucy, you're one of those positive thinkers, aren't you? No, I'm not. We need to be realistic. It's no good pretending that it's tough when it's tough. It's no good trying to bury that under the carpet and to move on. It's no good trying to turn every negative into a positive, because that can both be unhelpful, unsafe. You're not going to learn anything from it. So, as much as possible, being as realistic as we can, being as authentic as we can about what's going on. Sometimes as parents, that's about admitting to our children, I don't even know what to say. I haven't got any advice for you right now. But the connection part of it is, but I'm here. The noticing part of it, and I'm in this with you. I'm prepared to uncover it together and to be honest about what I could know about it, choosing some stillness together. These things all start to connect to each other. So it's about trying to get to at least as accurate as possible for the situation, rather than trying to dismiss what's going on, trying to make out it's not as bad as it is, and and all of that stuff. Because what happens in the end is that we just become white noise to our children. Well, you would say that because you're my mum or dad. So we have to be realistic. And the final one is about mastery. This isn't about perfection. This isn't about getting it right all the time. It's noticing the small, tiny, incremental things that just feel a bit better, or just mean I move forward a little bit, or I just start to open my understanding that I have got capacity, I can do this stuff. It's not about the end goal, but it's about the journey and the mastery of that journey and where I am on that journey. And as much as possible with parents, if we can use process praise, that is explaining the detail of why something, rather than saying, oh, you're a brilliant drawer or great at drawing, What you do with process praise is you say you're a brilliant drawer because you put in a lot of detail, you use a lot of colours, you use the brush and then the pencil, and you keep within the lines. All of that process praise, I can do more. I understand what I'm doing well, and I can do more of it. When I just say you're a brilliant drawer, so oh, okay, I think that's good. I'm not quite sure why. So, and process praise is where we really develop that mastery. So that overall idea that this is hard, I'm not ignoring it, but I'm here and I'm here with you, and I'm willing to put the time in and put the effort in with you, alongside you, learn with you, and and from you for this. But overall, psychological fitness is not about removing pain. It's not about pretending that expecting our children are not going to struggle, but it is about building the skills that help us to move through it. I hope that's been useful. For those of you that are watching this in the community, please let me know what you think. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Please take care, and let's always share as much kindness and as calm as we possibly can. Bye for now.